And now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, to talk some shh IT with Glenn and Tony.
Thank you, Ange.
She let the air out of the tire.
Let the air out of the tire again, as many times as needed to be done.
Well,
Well,
I think
welcome
it's
back to
3.
another Thursday. 3 times,
Shh,
usually three
shh,
times.
shh.
And I mean, 3 times is her magic number, so I mean that would make sense, of course. Still got my mic in a weird spot over here, but good to see you again, Tom. Got your C music happening over there. I think we're going to get some use out of that today a little bit. With,
Yeah, I want
over
to
a
see
couple
some
things.
music.
Yeah, we're going to see some music. We're going to go over some chord progressions. We're going to go over a couple of ideas on things. We're going to talk some general music stuff. But I figured for starting out, I was going to say a few things about chord progressions. One of the videos, we're going to actually watch the video a little bit later, but it's about how to fatten up the sound of a chord progression, like taking just any basic chord progression that you could find, that you might be interested in using, and making it sound more full, more rich. And part of it, we've done a couple of different ones over the months, where we've gone into how to actually change the orchestration, where we're changing using the slash chords, using the different inversions of the chords to go with the leading tones and have the the highest note giving us a melody line, or we're going for the lowest note to give us a good walking bass line. So those are the two usual cases that we'll be going with to try to change the inversions of the chords to get them to fit better, whether it's more comfortably in one place or whether to get the motion of the song, the motion of the melody to go the direction we're looking for. But that's where we can take just a few principles. And there's a video again that we're going to watch later. But some of the principles from the video are taking one of those, or like if you just take an A minor chord, for example, and you just play a nice little A minor chord, just those 3 notes. And then if you add an A down in the bottom, you're not changing the chord at all. All you're doing is fattening it up, making it a little bit more full with that extra low note. And you could even double up that low A note by using 2 A's down there, like the A below that. And this, if you were writing it out in MIDI or what have you, you'd probably be doing a double bass and a cello, and using different instruments for these. But even on a piano, it's a very nice full sound already.
Yeah, I like doing the double.
Yep.
Makes for a nice A minor chord.
Yep. And then you can start adding other things, like you can add other 5s in there, for example. So, it doesn't have to be the one in between those in the bottom, but if you added another 5 somewhere up top, even, that could be a nice little leading melody for you, leading a note somewhere else if you're in your progression there. Nice. Always a fan of A minor. It's always a good one.
Oh, yeah. That's a good progression to start with.
Yeah. And even just getting comfortable with bouncing around a little bit right there with, whether it's the root and the 5 in the left hand, kind of bouncing back and forth, and whether you're just kind of arpeggiating or just kind of selecting chord tones in the right hand and just bouncing around a little bit. Just kind of keeps things flowing. Nice. And then let's say we were doing a 1-4-5 in the key of A, we would be doing that A minor, and then we also be adding a D minor and an E minor at different points. And then we could even, that's a good one to start with, even just those 3, because taking those 3, and whether you go from the A and then up to a D and then up to an E, where it's all rising is one thing. You can go from that A down to a D and then up to jump to an E, where you're bouncing more. Just different choices in how you're laying that out.
That's kind of nice. Just kind of walking up. And then back down.
Yep. And then again, you can go from where you started and go down at first, and then even go way down further. So like go from the A down to a D and then down to an E.
Yeah, starting with the 5th actually there. not a bad approach. You don't always got to start on the one.
Nope, you don't. And it doesn't always have to be the 1, the 4, and the 5, but they're usually the easiest ones to talk about first because they all tend to, if you're in a home key, whether you're in a major key or a minor key, they're going to
Very
stay the same.
natural together.
All 3 are major or all 3 are minor. Of course, that's not always the case because you can be playing in a different mode. If you're playing in Dorian mode, for example, it's no longer all major. You'll have differences based on which mode you're in, and that kind of changes the way everything works together. But it'll change the sound of it. With that was the minor progressions. If we were doing the same kind of thing, but let's say we were doing it in, let's change keys on Tony, go to G major.
Oh, well, fortunately, I'm good with G major.
All right, little G major action, and like a 1, 4, 5 in G major, for example, you'd be starting with that G, and then feeling it out from there and seeing what you'd think for the 4 and the 5, whether it should be up or down.
G, 4, 5. It's a very different feel. Start with the 5.
I like that.
And
Definitely
again, starting with the 5 on the major is not a bad approach.
I'm a fan of throwing that A minor in there as well. Or actually, in this case, it would be for a G major. You probably not want to use the A minor.
E minor?
You probably want to use the E minor.
minor?
Yeah, relative minor.
Go from the G to the E. So it really resolves very differently going to the E. Start with the 5, to the 4, to the minor 1.
Nice.
Totally different mood.
Yeah. And with that 1, the 6, the 4, and the 5, when we're working with those 4 chords, you can kind of mix up which order you're doing them in. I tend to like to keep the 5 going to the 1. So I would like to usually end with the 5 at the end of the progression and start with the 1. And that way it seems like it always wants to pull back around, but then the 4 and the 6 being those other 2 in the middle.
And would you say the 6? You threw a 6 in there?
Yeah, the minor, the E minor would be the minor 6 there. It doesn't feel like it because it's so close behind the root, but it is actually the 6.
Okay, so like.
And then you can move down to the 5 and 4 from there,
Or 5, 4, E minor.
Yeah, 6, 1. Another way to do it. And again, it doesn't matter which way it kind of rolls around. It's just a matter of it doesn't feel like it's driving to the right place.
Yeah, it gives me so many ideas. There's so many ways you can go from that.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm doing it in an inversion right now, starting with the 5 and first inversion.
Yep. And just breaking up the chords like that just sounds beautiful.
It's really not hard to jump back and forth between the relative minor and the major and come up with something good. Yeah, and it really does switch up like your mood. if I'm playing in a major progression, you know, 1, 4, 5, or with major, and then switching it up to the E changes the mood, and now a 4 from the E. Whoa, see.
Totally changes that feel up, yeah.
Yeah, that minor really resolves very nice. For a minor sound. I mean, it is darker, but it's got brightness because it's coming off of it, starting with the G.
Yep.
It's like
So
a mood
where you
swing.
start and where you're headed.
Takes the song in a different direction.
Yeah. And we're not, and this is just, you know, one or two, you know, chord progressions that we've talked about so far, but there are so many different ones that we could go into. Those are usually ones that just come up right away, but I like to try to look at the whole palette. Not even the whole palette. I don't like to use the diminished chord just because it gets clunky, it gets in the way sometimes. It's perfectly valid to use in situations, and it brings up that, whether it's spooky or unexpected or whatever, brings that weirdness to any song. But
Now, do
I
you
really
mean
do.
diminished chord in the scale, or
Like if you're playing in
diminishing a chord?
Well, no, if you're like playing in C major, for example, we're dealing then with like the 1, the 4, and the 5 are your major chords. So you got your C, your F, and your G. And then your 2, 3, and 6 are your minor chords. And that's the D, E, A. And then the B is diminished. So if you play those, the B, D, F right there, that's the, well, technically that's the B minor 7 flat 5, but that's, you know, a B half diminished. And I usually don't compose a lot with that chord because that one in the context of a C major or an A minor thing doesn't always fit that nicely. So usually we just kind of set that one aside and then we just deal with the other 6 chords where we're dealing with 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, but we can use that whole palette. We don't have to just say, okay, well, we're in the key of G, so we can only use, you know, the 1, the 4, and the 5, or we're in the key of A minor, so we can only use the 1, 4, and the 5. We can use the 2, 3, and 6 anytime we want and just mix them on in there as long as you're using the appropriate minors where you should. So if you're doing a major thing, 1, 4, and 5, the 2, 3, and 6 can all be in there, but minor when you're ready for them.
See, so if I'm in A minor and I go from a 1 to a 2,
right? Now that's the thing, is the 2 is actually
doesn't really sound good.
Doesn't sound right because that's that minor 7 flat 5.
But if I extend the 5th on the B, actually does feel like it's rising up. I mean, I'm no longer following the A minor with that, with this, but
and that's because
it sounds
that second,
better.
That 2 chord in a minor progression, that 2 chord is the diminished chord because the fact that minor is the 6 to the major 1. Same way, so like if we're looking at that A minor as the root, that is still the minor 6 relative to the C major, if we were talking about what root major key we're in. So that would make that B, which is the 2 for the A, but it's the 7 for the C. So that's that diminished chord right there. And that probably sounds really confusing.
Now I see the relation. Okay, so the 2 and the 7 are proportionate to whether you're in minor and the 2 is off the minor, or whether you're in major and the 7th is the same basic principle.
Yeah, the idea is that if you're in a minor key, you would say the 2 is the one that we're going to leave out whenever we're composing. We'll compose with the 1, the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and we'll leave the 2 out. And if we're in major, we're going to use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and leave the 7 out. And it's the same chord. That 7 and that 2, that would be that B half diminished. But we can use those other 6 chords, 3 major and 3 minor, and mix and match how we like. And
now that raise is really nice on a major.
Yeah, it does.
That has a nice rise up.
I could hear that in a video game.
Yeah, as the guy gets shot. Falling down slowly.
Yep, the heart-wrenching music, right? Pull those heartstrings. I like it. But that is where like there is such a wide variety of opportunity in all those chords. But again, it's just when you're in minor, you're kind of leaving out the two, the minor two, and if you're in major, you're leaving out that major, the seven, which would be the diminished, and then leaving those two out, you can just do anything else, because any of those other chords, you should be able to figure out whether it should be a major or it should be a minor, because wherever you started, whatever your root note is, if it's major, then that one and the 4 and the 5 are all going to be the same, all major or all minor. And that's, again, if you're in a home key that is major or minor and not one of the other, like Dorian and Aeolian, or Aeolian is minor, but whether you're in Mixolydian or Phrygian or one of the other modes is the term I was hunting
all
for.
the other chords actually work. Regular, C, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. All those work nice.
Yeah.
This is where it gets squirrely.
Yep.
Not as bad as if you're going up like that.
Sounds nice.
See, it doesn't sound nice when you're playing him the chord out. That B is the
on that B. Which notes are you hitting with that B? Because I'm thinking it should be.
I'm keeping the fifth. I'm not extending it, but
B, D, and F, right? So they're all white notes.
B, D, F. But I really want to be hitting F sharp. Right? That sounds.
It's what you feel like you want to, and that's that flat 5. That's what makes it the half diminished. Yeah, exactly. It's what you want to do, but it's not the one that fits in with the key. That's where
it's what my ear wants to hear.
Yeah, but you have to tell your ear, no, not this time.
No.
Not
Glenn says no.
But that is just one of the ways to do it. And the other question is whether it's more of a bouncing thing, because looking at the rhythms that you're using too, and when you're trying to flesh these ideas out, whether it's just bouncing something really quick or holding them down, all the differences.
See, if I just ignore the 5 there when I go to the B and just do the 1, 3, it's kind of a workaround, because then you don't have to decide on the mood of the 5th note.
And that's the main thing, is you just have to know to put that little that caution cone, that yellow cone or orange cone out there for that chord, just so you know, we got to do something a little different right here. Otherwise, it gets that little clunker in there. But
depending on the way,
and it's only that one spot you have to worry about. So
yeah, depending on the way I claw the chord, like if I'm doing it in first inversion, don't even need the 5th, just all thirds.
Very nice. It's a good workaround. And as you can see, you can just
can't go wrong with thirds, as long as you hit the right third.
The other one I like doing sometimes is just going in I guess it's on the guitar, it's more of a geometric pattern where like I go from a chord and then just go down to a 1 fatter string, but the same root. So like go from an A string rooted chord to an E string rooted chord, where I'm just basically going 1 string fatter. It's going down a 4th basically. So it would be going from like, if you're playing in C, you'd be going from C down to G. So it's going down that way, going down a 4th, but going down to the 5th from where you started. And then going back up to basically a whole step below where you started, and then coming down from there as well, a 5th. It makes a little square. Probably not describing it very well, but it's more of
oh, is that what you're talking about?
That's a nice little back and forth. I like that.
It's C, do down to the G, and then down more to a lower C.
Yeah, exactly. That actually gives that nice resolution to land at the bottom down there. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's how symphonies tended to finish back in the old days.
Sure. Yeah, because almost sounds like it's just going back and forth, but it also ends up going back down and then down more. So it gives you that little unexpectedness. Plus, you can add variations or add embellishment to the top of the chords as well to add little changes to make that little melody line go if you want.
Yeah, again, depending on how I invert on the right hand, lends for so many different approaches.
And I like that little lead-in approach that you had right there, and the little 3-note, like just 3 notes leading right into it, just very nice.
It's been something I've been stuck on for like 20 years doing these. These 3-note walks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. That's another thing that we should break apart one night is looking into some of the key differences between some of the composers, because that's one that we've had some of the people that we've worked on their videos, or we've looked at several of their instructional videos, and some of them they break apart the actual style and determine, this is what makes Bach style, or this is what makes this sound more like Mozart, or this is what makes it sound more like Beethoven.
Yeah, with those guys, that's where the theory starts to really come in handy, because understanding the theory of a fugue or a toccata, and some of the different melody approaches that around all of those different kinds of songwriting approaches, really they defined.
Yep.
I mean, a fugue is awesome.
Contrast. Yeah.
I have a hard time writing one. I can write it on paper. When I learned theory, I did learn how to write a fugue on paper. I never mastered because my two hands, they don't play in a fugue. You really have to be like thinking with both your hands at the same time, playing parallel melodies.
Right. That's one of those tricky things. So it's like with similar to drumming, where getting 2 things is fine, but getting 3 things is a little tricky, and getting 4 things together is like now it's all falling apart until you start to get it. But once you get the actual getting them together,
to drummers' credit, like they're not just dealing with their hand challenge; they're using their feet. Some drummers, wouldn't be surprised they use their heads.
You would think so, just even listening to the lines they're coming up with. I saw one guy the other night. I was watching a video on some drum rudimentals, just to see some things that I should be working on, essentially, just to whether it's get smoother or get faster or get more comfortable with adding up change ups and things like that. One of the big ones was trying to come back around after, like, if you're going to do something, whether it's doesn't have to be super flashy, but you're going to do something as a finishing, something like that. It can be very simple, but getting from that and getting back into or whatever you were doing at the time, like it's very easy to drop that ball. So like you're so focused on I did it. Oh wait,
that's why I always had a hard time. Like every time I ever tried to play drums, I kept leading with the carriage, not the horse, and trying to do fancy shit before I even got down the initial bass snare relation.
Exactly.
Never mind the like hi-hat stuff going on.
And when I was watching this other guy, or when I watched some of them going on, it's just I didn't realize when I would hear like on the drums, I always assumed that was both hands, like back and forth, just really fast. And I'm like, wow, it ties in both
on the
hands.
drummer.
There can't be anything else going on. But then I'm watching a video of Fish the one day, and Fishman, it was just a where with the one hand it was like that one stick, and I'm like, oh, so his other hand is free to be doing over here while it's just doing that. I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, and with some of these modern drummers with the double bass techniques, in the last like 25 years, it's hard to tell what they're doing down there unless you put some cameras down there and you really see the dual footwork.
Yep, you see that floaty feet happening, going back and forth.
Yeah, Jason showed me one girl. She's a drummer for I think Crypta, or one of his metal bands he really loves, and she has this awesome like reverse hand technique. And when she's doing those rolls, you're thinking like it seemed natural that it would be you know, rolling across the toms.
Sure.
But she actually, like, sometimes is doing them backwards, and her right hand is actually playing something over on the left side of the drum while her left hand is doing the roll, and to see it is
nice,
amazing.
Yeah, for me it was always like if I'm doing the hi-hat on the right hand over here, that is crossed over. So this is the right hand on the left side doing that, and then the left hand is kind of doing other things. But if I'm going to go do fills or any of that kind of thing, that's bringing both hands into the fills. But watching some of these guys get those tom hits in, and then just getting that snare hit in at the right time, which doesn't sound difficult, but it's one of those things that to see it happening in a really well crafted beat like that is like, wow.
Oh, anytime I see a drummer who like will just literally move their arms in any direction, and like Neil Peart style, and
it doesn't look like they're in a rush. They're not like
around them.
They're not in a hurry to get somewhere. They're just, as they're moving, and notes are just coming out of them.
Oh yeah. The fluent drummers just make it look easy.
Mm-hmm. Like Animal here in the chat. Got Animal drummer there. Animal.
It's one of my favorite drummers.
And Animal against Buddy Rich. You saw that one? At one point, they did a drum battle, Buddy Rich versus Animal. It was a good one.
Oh, Animal can battle.
Yeah, with the old Muppets. But yeah.
Actually, I like that whole band. The Muppets band had some cool characters in it. That hippie chick.
Yeah. Some good stuff. I always like the guys up in the balcony.
Oh yeah, they are my absolute favorite.
And Beaker was always good too. Didn't have much to say, but you could always tell what was on his mind. Yep. Good stuff. Now,
actually, that's one that I was trying to reference. As I'm trying to think of like these commercial jingle-like approaches. It's time to was one of the first things that came to my head as commercial sounding, like gets kids ready for a show.
Yeah. And what I was thinking of was what's it called? Mana Mana, that one. That song was always the Muppet song that you would always hear as a meme after that. But it was a good one.
Yeah, and Sesame Street had some good ones. Mm-hmm. There was an electric company, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Both of them are good. Both have different aspects that are excellent.
Although Mr. Rogers is actually right in the middle between them. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. That is genius intro songwriting for a show.
Yeah, that was a good one. They just did. Did you see that movie more recently that they just did?
Oh, the one based on him? No, I really want to. Yeah,
it's a good one.
I heard it was fantastic. Didn't Tom Hanks? Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks. Yep. He did. He did a great job. Now somebody looks like it looked like Fraggle Rock for a second there, but it might still be the Muppets.
No, that's Beaker.
Well, but it's right after Beaker. You'll get there. It'll get to you. It's one of those that Tony always needs an extra second for the refresh because
actually it looks like Beaker's about to give the finger.
He's actually
that's not the Beaker I know.
He's hitting the red button, making sure everything goes according to plan.
Oh, there's the next one. Yeah, that does look like Fraggle Rock.
The Frags. The Fraggles.
I loved all Jim Henson's work. They mixed beautiful music with puppetry, and that was our animation.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And at the time, it was the way to do it because there wasn't a lot of high tech options for doing animation at the time, really. So they had to make something happen. So puppets it was.
And it did focus on music and voice acting.
Absolutely. And that is one when you think about it, whether it's music for adults or music for kids, there's a lot of things that are the same. And in some cases, when it comes to music for kids, it's just more of whether it's more simple or whether it's just more always happy, always major, usually not delving into the minor very much. There's just certain aspects that you might figure out that are just more towards, kids style songs as opposed to something else. Because they always have that upbeat, happy,
Minor is a tougher sell on kids.
Yeah.
To get something that's kid friendly or that kids soak up with minor, you really got to go the extra mile. Major, easy sell on kids, and if it works good with kids, it tends to work just as well on the adult side.
Mm-hmm. I was trying to think of the
Whereas
one.
if you get something that works for adults, that doesn't mean it's going to work with kids. Kids have different ears.
One that worked really well with my nephew. It was a piano piece. He was learning piano and taking lessons, and there's one piece that he just loved because it was very, very loud. It was like a fortissimo piece where it's like you're really just banging on the piano, but it was
that
very
says you
spooky.
might have a little metalhead there.
Exactly. Well, he's also the one who plays. He's playing. Jimmy was a race car driver. He's playing Primus on the fretless bass I left over there. So yeah, he's definitely doing his thing. But just some fun stuff that he was doing with that. And again, it was the dynamics of it. He loved that he could play as loud as he wanted. He could just bang on that piano, and it was a very spooky sounding song. So it was because it was in a minor key. That one in particular, but that was, like you said, it's a hard sell. Like it's tough to get them. Like it's not going to be a sad, sappy song that you're going to sell a kid on with that. But for that kind of spookiness and that like being able to play loud, like he loved that. Just the dynamics of it.
And when you're looking at a kid who's just first approaching music instruments, you're going to get two different kinds of responses. You're going to get those who might just want to explore on a note, and those who it's about volume. Like, the kid who starts with drums is more likely to be the rocker in the future than, the kid who starts with, a piano key, unless they're approaching it like Tchaikovsky style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the thing is, some of the stuff that we used to learn when we had our piano lessons. We would go through some Tchaikovsky, we'd go through some Liszt, we'd go through Chopin, we'd go through a number of different composers.
Just those three composers alone, you have three different kinds of feel to, like, whether you're starting with a kind of composer like Tchaikovsky or the Liszt really was a nice flowy kind of sound.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I love is that, when you hear them, after you've heard enough pieces from, the different ones and being able to hear those differences. So you hear a piece and you're like, that sounds like the style of either this one or this one. And then as it goes on, you're like, yeah, it's definitely this one. And you can like narrow down and, definitely say, okay, that definitely sounds like that one. And again, they are limited bodies.
And then you get those composers like that, like Beethoven, one day he's, and then the next day he really could go back and forth with the mood.
Yeah, he covered a lot of ground with that, for sure.
Yeah, even like, everything from his Fifth Symphony to his Ninth had a lot of variance in the stages.
Yeah. The other thing was how many of them use things like arpeggiation versus the held chords versus repetitive hitting of chords. Just those, each different style leads itself to different styles of music, depending on what you're trying to go for. If you want something that's very full and aggressive, maybe banging that chord a few times.
Or show-offy. Chopin. Like Chopin, basically, there's not a moment in his music where you don't feel like he's showing off a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Same with a lot of Bach,
In a good way.
Well, yeah. Back then, those composers were basically like, today's lead guitarists.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If the lead guitarist could like just solo the whole time in a lot of these bands, I think they would. Sure. The only reason why they don't is because the rest of the band says, hey, we're trying to write a song here.
Do you mind? And yeah, it's, everyone's got to be on the same page when it comes to the songs, right? So
and the flashiness is more impressive when it's selectively in throughout the song and not just like 5 minutes of arpeggios going back and forth. Because I do love listening to Chopin, and a couple of other composers I can think of that were just constantly going back and forth like that. Verdi, I think.
Sure.
I love hearing their techniques and things, but 5 minutes of it, just like anything, too much flash, and then all of a sudden it's like the dynamics are gone.
Yeah.
I'm no longer impressed.
It's not like it's a journey going somewhere anymore. It's more just like you're just floating around aimlessly at that point. Where you need to have a destination or a build up, and you're building up to go somewhere, right? You're building up to get to a big drop or whatever. There's some destination that you're headed for.
Yeah, I think with some of those musicians, what happens is they get caught in a groove pocket. It's just like if you're playing a riff with your band and you can't figure out how to end it, and you play the riff for like 20 minutes because you can't get the head signal and the like. This is where we're gonna resolve it. I think
The one time
sometimes
where
with the
everybody was
flashy,
almost on board, the one guy missed it, so everybody had to go around again.
yes, and then you start again, and next thing you know, you do it for another 20 minutes.
Because you never lined it all up again.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think
it
some
does
of
happen.
those solo-y guys, they get into a solo groove loop, and then they just can't get out of it. My
That was
my
actually one.
first guitarist was like that all the time.
Mhm. It's one thing I noticed from the videos we were watching the other day of Tokyo Groove Joshi. It
Yeah,
was the band from Tokyo that you're watching them play. They play phenomenally. They have bass and keys and drums and a saxophone player.
and they're good at adjusting their parts, like
Very good, very good.
the way the
And,
parts change.
mhm. And anytime somebody takes a lead, I noticed that they all basically followed the bass player style essentially. When she would take a lead, and then when it was time to resolve that lead or time to come back around, like she doesn't have to actually give a big signal to everybody, but she basically makes a show of like showing her face, like looking at you, looking
Yeah,
at you,
and then
looking
next
at
thing you
you,
know,
and
the
making sure
sax
that
is
they all
going.
see, and then they all come back around. So it's not a big like, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? It's just a quick eye contact, and they kind of all do that. And even if you don't make eye contact with the others, like when the saxophone player was making the signal, she just kind of went with like a out here and all the way
Yeah,
around and never even looked up from the sax, but it was more okay, I'm done, everybody back in kind of thing. So it's seeing signals like that I always like, because
yeah, and
it's
it's kind of
a little
easier
communication.
if you're that bandmate that's like in the back, and you can see what the person who's going to take the lead is, their movement.
Yep.
It's easier to pass
Hmm.
that song frisbee than when they're behind you and you're trying to finish off and pass to them, but you can't see them.
Right.
Then it's about practice,
It's also about the
or,
phrasing,
or
where
having
if
such a
you're
good ear that you feel the frisbee coming at you.
and also when you're going to throw the frisbee, it shouldn't just be you kind of and then okay, now it's their turn. It should be more you built something up, you had a story to tell, and you finished out on a big something or whatever. Like there's some event
A
that you end it off
slide,
with. Yeah.
just that one note or that one movement that
Hmm.
feels like it's going to get resolved by another instrument.
Hmm. Exactly. But very
that
cool to
would
see the
be that
communication
would
going
be
around.
where using the second or the seventh,
Hmm.
do it the right way,
Absolutely.
and the next person who's about to take over resolves it.
They know something's coming. It might be a train wreck coming, but they know it's coming. That's
Well, with the
okay.
way those girls put those things together, there is no train wreck in that sound.
No, definitely no. They fantastic, and just the way they trade off. Again, a couple of songs. One was "So What," an old cover, and just the way that they traded it back and forth with two basses. That was one where they would trade
Yeah.
solos. So the one would just be soloing and then hand it off to the other, and the other would go nuts with it. Beautiful stuff, and just to see, how well they go back and forth with it, and then to see another video later where you have the two bass players and the one is now playing saxophone and the other one's now playing keys or whatever. It's like it's great to see them
So,
jumping around to different
and I
instruments.
think having the two bass players at times like that makes that whole shifting between the different members all that much easier.
Oh yeah. Another thing that I found from jumping into bands that um, already had material, like when the band out in Pennsylvania, they had some material that was already put together, like a CD of 12, 15 songs when I first started playing with them over 10
That
years ago.
Pepe's.
Pepe's band, yep.
Yeah.
And the fact that they had the material ready to go and already had bass parts in it was so helpful for me to jump into the style, because it's like here I was able to take this home and it was homework for me. But for me, I had just gotten to the point where I was trusting my ear to learn stuff more, and that was new to me at the time. But I brought it home, I put it on, I started playing along to it, and I just was able to step into essentially his bass style for our originals that are there, basically following his stuff. But by putting that stuff under my fingers that many years ago, it's also bled into all of my other areas of music, which is great. I mean, it's all part of the style that comes together. Whatever you're playing over time all assimilates into your influences when
Yeah.
to what your sound
Oh,
eventually comes
without
out
a
sounding
doubt,
like.
all the songwriting that I've done in the last 25, 30 years was a result of the songwriters that my first bands. You know,
Yeah.
before I was writing songs, I was learning from my guitarist who was going to college and learning how to compose. All my writing later was influenced by the musicians that I learned how to songwrite with.
Right. And one thing, just as a quick side note on songwriting in general, trying to start from something very simple, like very, very simple, and even if it's something that's been done 1,000 times, if you start there, just to get yourself rolling, just to get started, because a lot of times the blank page syndrome is what gets you. Like, you want to write something, you want to write something, but you're sitting there like, okay, what am I going to write? I'm going to write this, and you get 2 notes down, and they're like, no, I'm not going to write that. I'm going to write something
Yeah, and
else.
there's nothing wrong with doing something that's been done 1,000 times. Because if it's been done 1,000 times, there's a good chance it's a formula that tends to work. You don't see.
But also starting from there. Yeah. Exactly.
That's a progression that you can use forever and just
for all different
change
styles.
it up.
All different styles. If you're banging on them, da 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 da, you're getting something Morse codish. Yeah, or you're hitting
All
them,
in how you
holding them
approach.
long, all in like a arpeggiated up, like all different ways of doing it.
REM. I mean, that's just 3 ways to play that progression, and
exactly, and
that's like another 100.
That's before you start getting into the substitutions, where again we can borrow chords. We can say, hey, we'll start with that, and then just take any one of those chords and say, well, now we'll make it a little different by borrowing this from the minor chord.
And that's really more the key. If you do say, I'm going to write a new song, and you start with something that's common that might have been done thousands of times, finding a way to variate it, finding a way to surprise the listener, because that listener is going to recognize the common sound, and then they're going to recognize that moment where you throw them off. And if you do it right, listeners love to be thrown off.
Yep.
As long as it's not like nails on the chalkboard kind of throw off.
Yeah, you can throw them off with something a little unexpected, but don't send them, careening down a cliff.
Yeah, not with your chords. If you're trying to do that kind of effect, write a horror movie soundtrack. It works good in that situation. Absolutely. But if you're trying to make a commercial song for the radio, you don't want to shock your listener like that. Because the radio
gentle
won't
on your
play.
listeners' ears.
Yeah.
But you can always, again, borrowing chords and just making those little substitutions can change what would otherwise be, oh yeah, there's 5,000 songs with that progression, but you just changed one little thing. And even if you only change it once every, if it's a 4-chord progression, instead of making it every time you make that change, you can just say, okay, here's the regular one the first time, and then the second time around.
That's what I tend to do.
Now it's an 8-chord progression instead of 4.
Yeah, if I have a 4-chord progression, usually I think like A-B style arranging, where 4 chords one way, maybe the same 4 chords with a different hit, or maybe a different direction for the 4 chords, going up on A, going down on B, and the song arrangement becomes A, B, maybe a C where like it's totally different than the other 2 parts.
Sure. And those are important distinctions also, things for people to be familiar with, discussing song forms like that, whether it's A-B-A, A-B-A-B, all forms like that. It's important to understand that you're talking about, this form, like this chunk of music is A.
Pieces,
this
parts,
chunk is B,
parts of the song. Like how Kevin like color coded that, with that Tennessee song.
Yep.
Thinking in piece structure as much as you are chord structure. Songwriting is a whole bunch of assembly.
Yep. And those types of mental shifts, like shifting into that A-B, what have you mode, makes the songwriting so much easier, because then you're only writing 2 parts and you're just rearranging where you're putting them to make the form of the final song, and it can make it more complicated or simpler, or make it unexpected, or what have you.
Yeah, and most people are pretty comfortable with, general lingo there. Like, they know what a verse, bridge, chorus. Most musicians grasp that at its simplest.
Sure.
And the purpose of
that is another one we should talk about one night,
a verse, a bridge, and a chorus.
Absolutely, because you don't.
These
not
days,
every song needs those.
Yeah.
Certain songs don't.
These days, you got a lot of rule breaking there. Like, does a song need a chorus? No, there's songs out there that don't have an actual chorus.
Sure.
But
I mean, you do
the
some funk
purpose
in
of
E,
a
and you can play
chorus,
15-minute song in the key of E, and you never change key once.
yeah. When
All
you
depends on the
do
style.
when you do write one of those songs where you don't necessarily have a chorus, or a bridge is not always a common thing. More songs than not don't have bridges. They just go
Sure.
verse, chorus all the way through.
Yep.
The, understanding where those little elements, how they can affect a song and whether that song needs one.
Yeah, that's the key right
Usually
there.
when a song does need a bridge, it's because the difference in the two parts needs some form of transition, because the parts themselves don't mash perfectly together.
Right. And like you said, it depends if it needs it, because you can't just take the the
Don't shove one
songwriter's
in there
handbook.
just
It's
for the
already
sake of having a bridge.
it says we have to
Ask
go verse,
yourself,
chorus,
do
verse,
you
chorus,
need it?
bridge, blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's see if it needs it, see if it helps, because it could even be that you put one in and it just doesn't match the song. That's another possibility. So that's where you can take that and put it from another song, or put it into another song. You can have multiple song pieces that could make sense in other places.
Yeah.
Anytime you feel like
you're shoving something into the song you're trying to make, like you're trying to force it in there, even in the case of like words, sometimes those who are writing words and they want to say that sentence, but the music that they're trying to say it over doesn't have all the hits for all the syllables. And sometimes we can try to cram it, and sometimes it can work. Like sometimes you can fill with an off-hit syllable word and get a 3-syllable word in there magically.
Or you
But
can
more
turn one
times
into
than
5
not,
if you need to
it
stretch it
sounds
out.
forced. If you listen back afterwards and it feels like you're forcing the words or the notes, the part, the bridge, if it ever feels like you're forcing something into the song you're trying to make, that's the time to ask, like, do I really want to put this into this song?
Yeah.
Save it for another.
There's a Grateful Dead song, China Cat Sunflower, and the words are just completely ridiculous. I mean, completely. Like, they make no sense at all. So if you're reading them, and like I went over this as an exercise at band practice over here in Jersey a couple months back, but we're looking at the song, and I was like, we can sing it together, because I know the song in and out, because I've listened to and sung that song 1,000 times, but the person who sings in the band wasn't that familiar with it. So I'm like, okay, let's go over it together. So like we're looking at the words together, and it's like you're saying, the way the
fuck are
words
these guys thinking?
the way, right. Number one, what are they thinking? Because these words make no sense. Like, these are all misprint, right? Like, this isn't a story. This is just a clump of words that kind of, some kind of fit together, but only really sort of. But when you actually start going through it, the way that they actually fit a lot of those words in is beautiful to see how the timing all does work out and how it does flow like that. So that's a good one.
There's an interesting challenge. Use random gibberish words on top of a song just to see how you can. It's kind of like scatting, or ska, and sometimes those exercises can help you come up with the actual words you do want to put into something.
Because it gets into the right timing, yeah.
Just by shoving words that have certain syllables, certain vocal sounds, might help you actually find the words you want to use.
Exactly. Good stuff.
Or simply humming. More singers, I wish that they would try to hum before they try to start. Like, I'll be showing, there's a couple of people that I try to show songs to, and I play 1 or 2 chords, and before I know it, they're trying to put words into it before they've even heard the progression. And right. I'm like, hum for a moment, listen to the progression.
Even whistling, that's another good one. Whistling is another
the
good
melody.
One. If you can't hum, you can whistle. If you can't, whistle or hum, but you can sing nonsense
fantastic.
words. But you can find some little, whether it's figuring out what the root notes are. Like, I usually look for the root notes, figure out like a root and a third. Because if I can figure out a root and I can find the right third, major or minor, I'm in business. So it's like you find those 2 notes and you're off to the races. So find those 2 notes, they're going to change chords. If you can find the root and the third in that key, you just keep working your way around. Once you have a feeling for, okay, it's a 3-chord progression, a 4-chord progression, whatever it is, now you're good to go.
Yeah, I can't sing for shit, but I can whistle like a champ.
See, and there it is.
And I like to I like to credit that
Mhm.
I've been whistling since I was really little, and it was always like the one thing I could do with my mouth with sound.
Sure.
I think it's what has helped me to always understand melody better.
Yeah, the whistling would help you understand melody better
Yeah.
than especially if singing wasn't your thing. And singing's never been my thing either, but it is one thing that as a family we always sing around the Christmas tree every year. So it's one of those things where we all sing once a year, and I guess over the past few years I've been doing more singing throughout the year. So like I listen more, or I notice more when we're singing in at Christmas time, and it's like I feel like I'm singing more than I used to, even if I don't know all the words to O Tannenbaum in German.
And you got the perfect voice for like Christmas music.
Go caroling.
That baritone works good at Christmas time.
Carry that deep voice. Yep, exactly. Gets you the extra drinks when you're going around caroling. Woohoo! Little bit of hot chocolate. Now, Christmas time is quite a ways off now, but what are we? Which kind of holiday songs?
I've already got people asking me to write Christmas songs.
I've seen people already asking about spooky songs
last week.
Halloween songs, spookiness, because that's coming up before too long.
Oh, I started thinking about Halloween actually at the beginning of the year. I look forward to October.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's one of those that, whether it's spookiness or whether it's Christmassy, just something that's, you pick that theme and you can kind of build around it. And again, using all these different ideas, whether it's the substitutions or whether it's just trying different feels or even different volumes, playing it louder than you would normally or softer than you would normally and slower than you would normally, seeing how all those feel, because it could just be that progression works well in this way, but not that way. You can find different spots for things to fit there.
That's why I like that. Was it Nari Soul who talked about the emotion approach? And
Yep.
That's why I really liked her ideas about thinking in emotion rather than like musical terms for how you're attacking.
And a lot of people don't see the translation there. They don't they would love to be able to express happiness or sadness.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I would think that would be natural for people to understand, like what's happy, what's sad, bright, dark, instead of thinking like, oh, C minor. The musical terms, I can understand why people can be confused when you're trying to describe that in musical terms. But when you say like, that's ethereal or airy,
or Hungarian reggae,
certain expressions, certain emotions actually describe sound much easier than the technical terms.
Indeed. Now, if somebody asked you to play something happy and something sad, but they asked you not to play a song that you know already, so that you're trying to make up something new that's happy or sad. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the idea is just what would define the happy or sad for you.
Well, I'd say C is always where I go to be happy. That's happy to me.
Nice. Yeah. And what about sad?
Well, then A. The relative minor would be like. But even that's not really that sad. I mean, if I'm gonna go for sad with A minor, something more reflective, more
back and forth, pensive.
Like, I had a hard day.
Very cool. And that's the thing is, there are people that you could sit down and ask them to do that same exercise and they would struggle. And I mean, for many years, I was one of those people. So, I mean, I get it. And even now, I would do the same thing where I would just automatically jump right to a happy, to a major. And for a sad, I would jump right to a minor.
See, I guess I would say how I play the notes actually is more the happy, sad thing. Because like with an A minor, if I'm...
That was the next part of my question was, can you play the same sad chords happily, and can you play the happy chords sadly? Much more cheerful A minor, yeah. What about not a sad C
on
major.
a sad C. A sad C's tough. Got to add the second in there to give it a little sadness.
Nice.
That would be a little less bright on the C.
Mm-hmm.
The
Excellent
second
examples.
or that seventh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good examples. And again, that's the whole thing, is that, minor doesn't automatically make sad and major doesn't always make happy, although they do tend in those directions, and you can reverse that very easily.
Yeah, it's common that they would, but they don't necessarily have to.
Right. Exactly.
Well, looks like the dads are going to be getting ready, and
Nice.
I hear they're live tonight, so
nice.
we're going to want to make sure we give Ange enough time to do her bouncing.
Yep.
But
she can jump in whenever she needs to.
Awesome warm-up for tonight. We'll be back after the dads.
Yep. And then I'll have either my guitar or my bass or my keys or all of them plugged in, and we'll see what we do from there. We'll figure something out. When I was doing keys before, I could have it where I could show you what I was playing, but it wasn't coming through the audio, and I could still reverse that and get it where it'll work fine, but I think it's better with you doing the keys and me doing something else on this end. So we'll try that out.
I got keys in front of me.
You do, and I like them. Now, what about let's see, we did A minor, we did the G major with the E minor. What about
the
E? What about the key of?
E's the one that, like, the E and B relationship, as I've been trying to get comfortable with all these guitarists who are drop Bing.
Yeah.
This.
Nice.
And these two has been one I've been exploring for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I like that with my low B on the bass. So get that B down there, and then everybody else, like you said, with that low E being the lowest note they get on the stringed instruments. They're good keys to be comfy in.
It just sounds so nice together.
They do, yeah. Very cool. Which other one goes with them? And that was both the E and the B are major, or both minor? And then
I started going nuts in my experience. At that point, after I got those two down, that's when I started trying the drop down.
Nice.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to shift over to F sharp minor.
Getting fancy over there.
Well, you guys keep doing these modal shifts, and I see all you guitarists doing it so easily, and I'm like, I can do that. I just have to reprogram my hands.
Yep. And it's actually, it's taking bite-sized chunks. So it's not jumping right to the 7 flats or the 7 sharps or whatever right off the bat, but starting from where your comfort zone is. Even if you only have a comfort zone that's, 2 or 3 keys, even if you're only comfy with C, F, and G, for example, you can still start to build out from there on the circle of fifths. So you start working out to the B flat and to the D and to the A and to the E, and working your way around and adding.
See, now I like the B flat to the D. This. That little jump up to the third, then back to the 7th. Such a nice sound. I've got a couple of songs that I utilize that.
Once it does jump to that 7, what if it jumps to the 6 right below that?
Oh yeah, that's Adele. Hello. Depending on how you approach that G.
That's why I kind of felt that way.
Yeah, I can think of a couple of ways to approach that one.
Yeah, very cool.
Ooh, 9. Ange?
Yep. 9 o'clock.
How you doing with the dads?
Get those guys rocking and rolling over here. And like we said, we'll be back after the dads to do more Talkin Shhh I.T.
That'd be 3.
That was 3. Just 3 little bursts.
Although she has the she projects those.
She does. She makes sure to send them way out there. Wake everybody in the room. Make sure they all come to class. Come to class, children. Got to get everybody in.
Yeah, she needs like a ruler or something she could slap on a desk. That's how they got my attention that way.
I think all she has to do is type, because we get the because she has this turbo typing where you can hear it from a mile away.
I know, she'd become a heavy metal typist.
Yep. I think it's just because the microphone is on the same surface that she's typing on, but still, it does sound silly.
And at this point, she can type like 150 plus words a minute. I think she can type faster than me, which is
going some. Yeah.
I was a programmer for 20 years. I can type as fast as I can think.
Yep.
As long as I know what I need to type.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, for me it was tech support, but yeah, lots of typing for many, many years. So it definitely gets fast. And I was typing fast before all that anyway, just from the regular. Yep. Just from typing, playing games, and email and whatever. I think we're just about to exit on out. So we will see you guys after the dads. We appreciate you being with us. And we'll come back in about an hour and a half. Enjoy the dads.
Catch you on the flip side.
Yep.